Welcome to Failure to Stop podcast. It's Breakdown Friday, and it's a special breakdown. Today in studio with me, I have the Santana brothers. You've heard of Carlos Santana, but have you ever heard of Cameron and Brian Santana? If not, today you're going to hear all about them and their new book, A Murder on Campus. But wait, there's more. Cameron Santana happened to be my field training officer, and we're gonna have so many stories today. I haven't seen this guy in years and years and years. He trained me back in 2012. We have a lot of really great memories. He's in the multiple chapters of my book, including the first chapter, Pig Latin. And so, and now we've come full circle. He was my training officer, and then in the same year, 13 or 14, 15 years, whatever, 2012 to now, do the math. That many years later, we both come out with books in the same year, that many years later, and we've reunited and reconnected. So he's going to be here. Today's show brought to you by ghostbed.com/Wolfpack. Sleep so good, it's scary. We also have Manscaped offering 20% off using the promo code Wolfpack. Head over to manscaped.com, and then meal planning to the next level. We've got factormeals.com/Wolfpack50. And I know I saw you, Josh, in the background throwing up Shield Box. I'll give them love. They're not a sponsor of today's show, not today, but they have been in weeks past. Shield Box, it's a great subscription plan. We love them. We don't have a promo code. That's like the only sponsor that we've ever gotten that didn't give a promo code. It was like, we don't care. We don't want to track your numbers. We just want you to advertise for us. We want to pay you to advertise for us, and we don't even care. We're not even going to track it. But I've always loved Shield Box. I love my monthly subscription that they signed me up to. Every month, I'm just getting all this new cool stuff from Shield Box, so I really appreciate it. All this and more on today's Failure to Stop Breakdown. Take it away, Joshua.
The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Oh, guns up, giddy up. We got a bunch of people in the live chat today. We got a nice guy from across the pond, eh? Folk around and find out. Bosco Autry says, "Are you Wolfpack in the house?" We also Armory Knights up in here. Elijah. Probably some Muslim, don't know, can't never pronounce his name, but it sounds Muslim to me. But we're not racist. We don't care. Will Cray, what's up, brother? We've got a super chat, 65 bones or Sikhs or whatever the fuck that is from Naishkin across the pound, eh? He says, I have a question for training officer. How many face palms did Transy give you? We'll get to that and more. Let me bring on his brother here. This is Brian Santana. Like I said, you've heard of Carlos Santana. This is Brian Santana. Brian, welcome to Failure to Stop.
Hi, thanks for having us today.
Santana, Cameron, Jace, JC, whatever you want me to call you, welcome.
Thank you.
So good to see you again. God,
I know. It's
so
crazy.
fucking nice. In the live chats, let me know. We're going to keep it loosey-goosey this morning. Normally on Breakdown, we break down a case. We are breaking down a case today. We're breaking down the case of a murder in the face degree that happened in the mountains of North Carolina. It's an unsolved murder. The book is out. It's called A Murder on Campus. The professor, the cop, and North Carolina's most notorious cold case, written by these two guys here. So we are going to be breaking down this case today, but we got to keep it loosey-goosey because how often do I have somebody that I served with that also was my training officer here? So if you guys got questions for my training officer, let us know. And I'm sure we'll get into some funny shows. But before we get started, guys, in the chats, do I sound okay? We're going off of a board today. I haven't used the board in a long time. How are our audio levels? If you're in the live chats, give me you sound great. If I sound bad, let me know and we will try to fix it. But I think all the levels look good on the board. Do I sound all right to you, Brian?
Yeah, sounds great.
Great. Nice beard, by the way.
Oh,
really? Where are you at, Brian?
I'm in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're in West Virginia. West Virginia by God. West Virginia by God. How did you and Cameron Santana meet? Where did you guys first meet?
Yeah, a long time ago. And even though I was telling him the other day that when we started on this project, and I was glad we were doing your show because I feel like I've learned more just about kind of his experience as a cop, just kind of working on this book, but also hearing about some of his stories with you. So I'm looking forward today just to hearing also about these experiences, because many of these are new to me as well.
Yeah, so the story today that we're talking about is Virginia Olson, and it's an unsolved murder. And let me just show you some pictures of Virginia Olson. Again, it's an unsolved murder, and it happened on a campus, college campus. We're going to hear all about it. Before we get into it, though, I'm going to leave it open to the chats, and I want to just play this really quick to get it out of my system. In no way does this reflect how I feel about this case, but I don't know. I saw the pictures of Virginia Olson, and then I thought about this news clip from back in the Bo Bergdahl days. If you guys remember this happened, this is a clip that came out on Fox News, and I just want to play it because I feel like this is something that could happen, could never happen to me. I would never do it because I'm a professional, right?
Oh, I don't care if she's 20. Hell, I'd fuck her. You can't say you wouldn't fuck her. Maybe that's what I'll do when they find her. I'll go and fuck her. Fuck her right in her pussy.
All right, well, we definitely apologize for that editing.
And that was for a live missing person coverage case. This guy waiting to go live about a missing 20-year-old said that live on Legacy Media, but that's why you tune into our other news show, FAWKES, because we would never accidentally say something so unempathetic. If unempathetic is a word, we would never do that. We are complete professionals here. So I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking it because you're all discussing. Yeah, folk around and find us is Jesus. Hi, that was dark, wasn't it? That was dark. When I lay you down in my bed tonight, my ghost bed, I'm going to tie you up and I'm never, ever, ever going to let you go. That is a poem written by Folk Around and Find Out. Chase.
Yeah.
You were my training officer many moons ago. Many moons ago. Welcome to the chat. So welcome to Feather Stuff. Did you ever think when I was riding in your cop car that I would podcast for a living 10 years later?
Yeah, I think that's the exact opposite. I remember when I got assigned to you, I went to the academy and I talked with Lauren, the admin person. I was like, so tell me about Tansy. How's he doing? And she was like, yeah, he's real special. He tries really hard. I think you'll get along with him. He'll work really hard. You may just need a little extra help. But I remember I walked out and you were like doing pull-ups and you had your turtle tattoo on your forearm, and it was a great time.
I'll never forget, man. I walked in, Brian. I walked into the station, really, really early in the morning. I wanted to be early for my first day on the job, and Santana was there, and I was like, I walked in. He was like, "Are you Eric?" And I hadn't heard my first name in a very long time because everybody in the academy calls you by your last name. And I said, "Yes, I am." And he says, "Good. We've got a call. Go get the car." And I was like, "Oh, well, cool. It's good to meet you." Hi, no, all out the window. Just go get the car. And I walk out. There's like a sea of fucking cop cars. I'm like, which fucking one? So I'm just standing there. He walks out the door. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Get in the car. We got to go." I'm like, "Which one?" And he was like, "The one sitting right in front of you. Which other one would you think?" And I'm like, I mean, honestly, like, any of the fucking 100 cop cars. And so I put my stuff in the car and I go to get in the passenger seat. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, he was like, "You're driving." And I was like, "Oh, like all of this is supposed to be common knowledge."
Well, they used to have this thing where they wanted the recruits to like ride for 2 weeks. And I was like, that's bullshit. I'm not going to give this guy like a 2-week break. Plus, when you get out of the academy, if you really want to be a cop, like you want to go be a cop, not be a ride along for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how I was trained. They just handed me the keys and they're like, "Okay, we're going to go fuck shit up." And that's how you're going to learn.
Yeah. And I got to my first call super early in the morning, and it was a big, giant 400-pound plus woman on the stairs. And
was that the first? I thought that was your second
okay, so
call.
That would have been the second call. Yeah, the first
one.
I always got that confused. So I think I fucked it up in the book.
Then let's get it straight. Your first call
would have been the naked guy.
Yes.
So I switched that in the book. My first call was different. So my first call, before I was even technically a cop, because my shift didn't start till 6. This would have been like 5:45 in the morning. I flipped the stories around in the book because I didn't remember which order they went in, honest to God. I thought it was the other way around. But I got to a car and Santana was like, "Well, get out and take care of it." And I said, like, "Okay." So I got out of my cop car and I walk up to the guy, to a woman, a really well-dressed lady, as I remember it. And she was like, "Oh my God, there's somebody in my car and he's naked." And I'm like, "Okay." And I look at Santana and he's like, And I'm like, and he's like, take care of it. And I'm like, oh, like I'm not even a cop yet, you know? So I walk over to the car and there's this guy like butt naked in the fetal position, cuddled up on a wad of panties and rose petals scattered out all over. And I was like, I walked back over to her and I'm like, so what happened exactly? She's like, I got in my car. I was backing out to go to work. I smelled something disgusting. I looked at my back seat. Oh my God, there he was. And I was like, and she's like, I just got out and I just called 911. So I knock on the door and I'm like, hey man, Raleigh police, like wake up. And the dude just snoring, like doesn't even care. So I look at Santana and Santana was like, talk like a fucking cop. And I was like, oh, I was like, Raleigh police, wake up. And the guy's like, what? Hello? And I was like, dude, what are you doing in this car naked? And he was like, I just got out of prison last night and it was really cold. And I'm like, where are your clothes? He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, so where did these panties and these rose petals come from? He's like, them's ain't mines. And
He
I was
also
like,
wearing a pair of pink panties.
no, he was butt naked.
I could have swore
No,
he had a pair of panties.
He put the pair of panties on so that we wouldn't have to talk to him butt naked in the middle of the street.
Okay, you're right.
He was butt naked. And then maybe you were like, before you get out, like put something on. And the only thing there were like panties.
Did you remember about the rose petals?
Yeah, that's what I said. The rose
Okay,
petals. And he
okay.
said, dims ain't mines. And so we asked the lady where the rose petals come from. She's like, I don't know. There's rose petals in my car. So this guy somehow got out of prison, got in this woman's car, butt naked, got panties from somewhere, we don't know where, rose petals from somewhere we don't know where. And then there was an extra pair of Guess brand jeans sitting in the car that were hers. And we asked if we could use them so this guy could have something to wear to jail. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, do you want me to bring them back to you? And she was like, no, just keep them. And this guy pulls these women's jeans up, stuffs his balls and his dick in the jeans, zips them up, puts his hands on his hips like Hulk Hogan. He's like super proud of himself. And we're all like, what the fuck is going on? So I take the guy to jail. And then the second call, which was right after that, was the 400-pound woman on the stairs.
Yes.
And then that was the one where she chases me around the yard. She tries to poop on me. And Santana gives me zero help. He doesn't do anything to help me. He doesn't give me any words of encouragement.
What does try to poop on you actually mean? What is the try part of that?
So this sounds unbelievable, but we get to the scene and it's off Peyton Street in Southeast Raleigh. And this lady really is like 5'2", 350 at least. Like she's just a big bowling ball. And she's got a sundress on that's, like really light and airy. And she's got an American flag wrapped around her head like a turban. And she comes, I don't know what she was high on, but she just came out barreling out, just yelling at him.
So she came out on the stairs. She was on the stairs. And we when we pulled up, the young man, he was like 16 or 17, came over to our car and he was like, my mom is off her meds and she's acting crazy. And I was like, oh, okay. And Santana was like, well, go ahead, take care of it. And I was like, again, like, how do I take care of it? So I get out and there she is. She's standing at the top of these stairs that leads into a house. So she's on the porch. And I walk to the bottom of the stairs and I look over at Santana and he's like this, hand on his cheek, just kind of watching by the car next to the kid. And so, okay. So I steeple my fingers like we're taught in the academy. And I'm like, hi, ma'am. My name is Officer Tansy with the Raleigh Police Department. What's going on today that your son is so worried about you that you're off your meds? And she gets into a boxing stance. She's up on her toes, elbows are in. She's rocking back and forth. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. She looks like she's done this before. I look back at Santana and he's still in the same position.
This was going to be a good learning experience.
Yeah. And I'm like, can you come down here and talk to me? She takes out her teeth, sets them down on the railing. Remember that?
Now that you say that, I do, but yes.
Yes. She takes her teeth out, puts them on the railing, gets back into a fighting stance. And I'm like, oh my God, like who takes their fucking teeth out? Oh, somebody who fights a lot and knows that they're about to fucking lose their teeth. So as I'm looking back at him, I look back towards her and she's coming down the stairs at me like a fucking bull. And like a matador, I swoop to the side. She runs by and she takes this American flag off of her head. She fluffs it out onto the ground. She gets down on top of it and she starts to like twerk on it. She's like grinding. She's like, you like this? you like this, big boy? And I'm like, no, not really. And I'm looking at him and he's still just standing there like this, like unimpressed. And then she's like, are you going to arrest me? And I was like, no, ma'am, I just would like to talk to you. So she reaches down, takes the sundress and takes it off. And now she's butt naked on all fours on this thing. And she's like, you going to arrest me now? And I was like, yes.
Probably not.
And she's I was like, for lewd and lascivious act. Like, I didn't even know. Like, I don't even know what the terminology was. I was just making shit up. And so I look over at Santana and he's like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And so I'm like, can you stand up and put your hands behind your back? And she does like a half burpee. She launches up. And I'm like, wow, that's like super athletic for a 350-pound bitch. She bends over, Brian, and my brain couldn't process fast enough what was happening. So I could hear a grunt. I could see a butthole opening and closing, but I couldn't put the two and two together. And then I saw a turtle head come out of the butthole and then suck back in. And again, my ear could hear the grunting. And as I put it all together, staring at this butthole, every time she grunted, the turd would come out. And then when she stopped grunting, the turd would come back into her ass.
She was trying really hard.
And so then it all makes sense that she's trying to shit on me. So I scream, she's trying to shit on me. And I start to run. Well, she's chasing me with her butt. She's bent over trying to launch this turd at me. And so I look over at Santana and he was like, put her in handcuffs. And I'm like, she's pooping on me. And he just looks angry. And so now I'm like, gosh, I don't even know this guy. Now he's mad at me. So she takes off running. And I'm like, come the fuck on. How is she going to just take off running like this? She's 350 pounds. So he goes, go get her. Like, he's visibly mad at me. And I'm like, oh my God. So dude, the sun's not even up yet. We're talking like 6:45 in the morning. And like, I think the bus was like driving by and like all the kids were like, wow, as this is happening. So I chase her up the stairs. She gets to the top of the stairs and she gets back in this. Oh no, she disappears into the house first. And he goes, I stop at the like foot of the stairs and I look back and he goes, go get her. And I'm like, so I just go inside this house and get her. And he was like, go. And I was like, oh my God. So I run up the stairs. As I'm running upstairs, she comes out of the house with a painting. She smashes it over my head.
Now did you tell him what the painting was?
I'll tell him in here. Just like, she goes, my president's black, motherfucker. And now I know I'm wearing a Barack Obama painting around my neck like a cartoon character. All of a sudden, this other guy who was on the SWAT team comes barreling past up my shoulder. He takes the chick by the face, mushes her over the railing, pulls out his pepper spray. He's like, you want to get sprayed, bitch? And she's like, no. And he's like, then turn around. She turns around, puts her handcuffs on. He looks over at me and he's like, was it that hard? And I was like, no, I guess not. And so you think the story's over from there, but it's not. So we get her to the car. She's naked. And I get her into the car, which was not an easy feat because there were the Crown Vics back then. They're very hard to get fat people in the back. And she's kicking on the door and everything. We get it shut. And he goes, you're just going to take her down there naked like that? And I was like, what? And he was like, you're not going to put any clothes on her? And I was like, I mean, he's like, go get the sundress and put it on her. And I'm like, I just went through all of that, getting this bitch into a car. And now you're going to tell me you want clothes on her? So now I have to open the door. She's kicking and everything. I ended up having the dress and I couldn't get it on her. And finally he gives up and he's like, just throw it on her. So I'm like, kind of like Frisbee golf. I've got the sundress and I just launch it like over her head and I shut the door. We get her down to the jail. And he's like, go type out an affidavit. And I'm like, yeah, okay, type out an affidavit. Like, I know what that is, right? Because I guess we had use of force and everything. So now we have to do all this stuff. So I walk over to this long line of computers and he's talking to some person in the jail and I'm by myself and there's a state trooper and I'm just staring at these computers. I have no idea what to do. And the state trooper looks at me and he's like, what's up? And I was like, what's up? And then he goes back to typing and I'm still staring at him. And he's like, you good? And I was like, no, I'm just typing out an affidavit. He's like, all right, cool. I was like, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what an affidavit is. He was like, what? I'm like, I don't know what an affidavit is. And my training officer is not helping me at all. And he was like, oh, I got you. So he logs me in. He's like, just write what happened. So I start finger fucking the keyboard. I'm like, she tried to poop on me. And he's, Santana comes and walks behind me. Now he's standing behind me. And I'm like, great. Now this guy's going to shame me because he's learning that I cannot type. I'm just one finger typing, And all of a sudden I hear like a, and And I'm like, what is he clapping? Like, what's going on? And I look up, she's naked again, standing on the bench, shitting on the floor, mud patties from like 3 feet up, just splattering. And I launched back into Santana, and he's like, you're lucky she's not throwing that at you. And I knew in that moment that he would have allowed her to throw that shit at me for a learning opportunity. And I knew I was fucked. That was my first hour and a half at work as a cop.
Yeah, and many more of stories about naked women. And I can't believe that you did not put the dildo story search warrant in your book.
Yeah, so last night we were talking, and Santana was, they're gonna come on the show and talk about their book and all this stuff. And so he's like, dude, what stories are in your book? Because he hasn't read it yet, and I haven't given him a copy yet. And I started telling him, and then he's like, did you put this story in? I was like, no. And he's like, did you put this story in? I was like, no, I totally forgot about that story. Did you put this story in? And he was like, what fucking stories did you put in the book, dude? Like, did you put any of the good ones? And I'm like, man, I forgot. So I totally forgot about the dildo story, because there's so many dildo stories, frankly. But I forgot all about the dildo story.
I mean, that was one of my favorites.
Well, go ahead, tell him by all means.
So Tansy is still training, and we'd gone through a couple weeks, I think. And one of the guys, Rich, he calls me and he's like, hey, I've got this guy that is selling dope, and he just walked from his shitty townhouse across the street to these crappy apartments to throw away his trash. So he was like, hey, bring your rookie over here to go get the trash. So me and Tansy get to this big, like, industrial sized trash can. Tansy climbs in, retrieves the bag. We go through it, and there's like tons of baggies that have Coke residue on them. So Rich types out a search warrant. We get the SWAT team, go hit the house. And this is Tansy's first search warrant. So he's really pumped. So I'm like, all right, we're going to break down the house. Everyone's detained. We start in the kitchen. I'm like, don't destroy anything until we start finding stuff.
Yeah, you were like, hey, because I was like, hey, what? So we're a search warrant. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I search things? I just start opening drawers and stuff. And he's like, yeah, just be like super kind and respectful. Like, this is somebody's house, and like we only have probable cause, but it just means they're probably guilty, but they might not be guilty. So like, don't like destroy their shit or anything like that. Just like, now if we find some crazy shit, then we're going to fuck everything up.
Yeah.
And we're going to find everything. But until we find shit, like, let's just be really kind and like, just be respectful. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
So very first cabinet I open, that's right above the stove, there's a big bag of Coke and a big bag of heroin just sitting there.
Yeah. And money, a sack of money.
Yeah. And so I tell Tansy, I was like,
Scale.
boom, we've got it. So he's like, oh, fuck yeah. He grabs a drawer and just yanks it out. And instead of having like...
It's in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So I grabbed one of the kitchen drawers, and I'm like, I'm excited, right? Because we wrote a search warrant, and there's like a lot of cocaine, for me at the time, for, the first time seeing a bag of Coke, you're like, whoa, fuck yeah, And so like my adrenaline starts to pump because I'm brand new, And so I grabbed this drawer in the kitchen, like just a regular kitchen drawer. Now there's kids. There was like toys everywhere, right. Like kids, like, the kids weren't home. They were at school because this was in the morning. But like the kids live in this house. And I grabbed this kitchen drawer and I yank it out. And like,
it was like 5 vibrators and dildos just go flying out, and they hit the ground and they start buzzing.
Yeah. Like a couple of them were like, brrr,
so then we had
hopping
K9
around
with us. And so Dave's dog,
goes
Lucy,
nuts.
comes.
The dog goes nuts. The dog's like, oh, bouncing toys, vibrating toys. So the dog runs over, grabs this big giant pink vibrating dong that's, wiggling back and forth. And now the dog is running through the house with this dildo.
Yeah.
And then people are all handcuffed on the chair because they were prostituting out of there as well. I think that's what the dildos were for. So they're selling Coke, prostituting, kind of liquor housing it up. But so now that, so there's like 3 or 4 people detained. And the dog's running around with this vibrator.
I don't know if you remember this part, but one of my favorite parts about it is, we had to trash the house because it's got so much just junk. So we're making like piles of shit, as we go through it. And a lot of the neighbors had come by. And so I'm like, okay, like once we get out of here, like, let's all leave together. And then the house is given back to the owners. So we leave. And there's probably like 20 or 30 people in the front yard. And we get around the
that's
block,
right.
and Tansy goes, "Oh shit, my sunglasses! I left them in there." And I was like, "Fuck that! We are not going back in there for your damn sunglasses."
And then she posted on Facebook wearing my sunglasses, and she wrote like Popo left his sunglasses during our search warrant or something like that. She had them on, so I got made fun of quite hard for leaving my. But at least I didn't leave my radio. Like some dudes have like left fucking radios, and suspects will pick the radios up and start talking on the radios at houses. That's never happened to me. I think one of my favorite stories was one of my first night shifts. We got into they were good. They were Wiley X sunglasses too. In the live chats. Katie K, new in the chat, says, "What an interesting time for me to enter this stream. Welcome. This is a different case breakdown than we've ever done." Katie K, we're going to be talking about the book, A Murder on Campus, that was written by my training officer and his brother. But I haven't seen my training officer in years and years and years. And so we are going to get to this book, and it's awesome. And it's just an unsolved murder, but we're kind of reminiscing. We're going back through the days of old, and so just enjoy it. Some of my fans have been here for 4 or 5 years that they've been following this channel, and so this is kind of a magic moment for everybody. But one of my favorite stories, not favorite, I forgot to put this in the book, and I should have. I cannot believe I didn't think about this and didn't go in the book, and it is one of my favorite stories that I had just forgotten all about. And that was my first foot chase ever. And it was a loud party call, and we were driving to it, and you were saying, hey, listen, like whoever runs, like just chase them. Just to get some experience. Normally for a loud party call, you just show up and everybody runs and then you leave. And he's like, but you need some practice chasing somebody. So just pick somebody out of the crowd and go fucking get them. And I was like, oh, okay. So we roll up on this loud party call, and this guy, and I'll let him do the description here in a minute, takes off running. And so he goes, go get him. And I jump out of the car and I'm running. And he shut and locked the car, so he was quite a ways behind me. And so he takes off running, or I take off running. He's locking the car. And what was my radio traffic?
He says, suspect looks like he's in Jersey Shore. It's a loud party call, so like, who cares if they run away? Yeah, that was my. So I'm running, and I'm like, the suspect's got big ears and he looks like he's from the Jersey Shore. Anyway, the guy dives down into the woods and he lays down and he's not moving. And so I'm like, I turn my flashlight off so it's pitch black, and I know what's going on because like being in the Army and the training that I had just went through, like this is my realm. Like in the woods, like this is where I'm good. Like I know what I'm doing in the woods, especially at night because of all the crazy land nav courses and SEER school and all these schools that I've been to. Like we did everything at night. We own the night. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'm in the woods. We're in kind of a draw. It's thick. This guy's got no chance against me. And the woods, like, I'm going to find this dude. And it's going to be game on. So it's pitch black, and he comes running through with his flashlight. And I'm like, turn your flashlight off. And he's like, what? I was like, turn your flashlight off so he can't see us. He turns his light off. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, hold on. And I pull my gun out. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to shoot around in the ground. And then this guy's going to get up and start running again. And then we'll know exactly where he's at. And so he's like, turns his flashlight on. He was like, holster your gun. And the guy gets up and he goes running. He's like, don't you chase him. And he was like, put your gun away. And I was like, but he's like, get out. Let's go. We're leaving. And so he gives me this, like, he's really mad at me. And he was like, were you really going to shoot a gun around into the dirt? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you know the policy on warning shots. I was like, no, I wasn't going to give him a warning shot. This was like a scary shot. Like I was going to scare him. You called it recon by fire.
Yeah, recon by fire, bro. We do this all the time in the military. And he was like, he went and had a talk with the sergeant. They opted not to write me up for it, but they did give me a long, stern talking to about how I'm not allowed to just pull my gun out. Katie K says, oh my gosh, this reminds me of every night shift I ever worked. Trauma center in the projects of New Jersey. Yeah, it's fun.
Why don't you tell them about the, speaking of traumas.
We'll do one more. Story.
One more?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Which one you want? Trauma? Which one?
I think the one where, so we were at Wake Med, which is where the trauma center is.
Okay.
And it got to a point where we were getting so many walk-in gunshots that we would just eat lunch. So
at
around
the hospital.
at the hospital. So for us, midnight to 2 a.m., somewhere around that time.
Yeah, so we had this gang war going on. It was like Crips versus Bloods, plus the Bloods were fighting the blood. So it was like Sex, Money, Power, which was like, I guess like a blood sect or something. I don't know. I'm just making up the gang. That is a real gang name, but I'm not sure if that was the one that was fighting at the time. But just for the sake of the story, it was like Sex, Money, Power versus like nine trade bloods. But they're like both bloods, but there's different sect of bloods. They were fighting each other. And then the Crips, a few blocks over, were also fighting the blood. So it was like this really big, it was just like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks of just shooting after shooting. I was like, every fucking night somebody was getting shot and walking into Wake Med. Of course, they don't ever talk. So we just started eating lunch at Wake Med at midnight and waiting for the walk-ins to come in so that we could see who's bringing in these shot folks.
Yeah. So they first started dropping them off like at the actual entrance of the hospital. And then they figured out that when they did that, we would get their car because that's part of the crime scene. So then they would drop them off at the bottom of the hill. So this kid got dropped off at the bottom of like the hospital away from the actual entrance. And someone gets the attention of the staff there. They go grab him. And he's got a gunshot wound to his leg, which happens all the time. And normally you're going to survive that. So his family is called. And we're in the trauma center. And I think you were studying like your certified specialist of wine. So you had like
my note cards.
Yeah, your note cards that you're like looking through in the trauma room. And anyway, so Tansy tells the mom,
I had to go pick the mom up from the house.
Okay, whatever.
Because you didn't hear this part of the story. I'm just now remembering all of this. I was supposed to be in training. No, I was in training, right? No, maybe I was out of training. I don't know. I was a rookie. Yeah. But like somebody told me, they were like, hey, this kid's mom lives in Mackinac Island. Can you go pick her up and bring her to the hospital? So I went and picked her up, and on the way, because Thanksgiving was right around the corner. It was like the next day, or it was that weekend, whatever. And I'm driving her back, and I was like, so how was like Christmas? I was like, ma'am, your son's been shot, but he's fine. He's like, he's totally good. He's been shot in the leg. He's at the trauma center. Like everything's cool. And so she's like, oh my God, I had a bad feeling when he left the house. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, thank God. I mean, maybe he learned his lesson. Maybe he's learned his lesson. Maybe him getting shot will make him open his eyes that he's got to be done with this gang shit. She's like, yes, praise the Lord, praise God, yes. Oh, we can only pray. And I was like, so what did you get him for Christmas? She's like, I got him a Ray Lewis jersey. He loves the Baltimore Ravens. Blah, blah. And we had this great, I'm like, so are you ready for Thanksgiving? She's like, oh, Lordy, yes. Oh, it's going to be an extra better Thanksgiving because, oh God, I feel like God's giving me and my boy a second chance. And then we get to the hospital.
Yeah. So Tansy comes and talks with me. He's like, hey, I've got the mom. And I'm like, oh, well, the kid's dead. And he's, I just see all the color in Tansy's face just go away. And he's like, I told her that, that he was fine.
He was okay. I just told her.
And I remember
nothing to worry
Eck
about.
was there.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, big man, we're going to have to go talk with her. Let's put her in one of the private rooms.
Oh, and she was so mad at me. She was like, you said he was okay. And I was like, I meant it. I thought he was okay because he just gotten shot in the leg. Like, I thought he was going to be fine. But he wasn't. He died. Yep, he died right there. And then that whole week, everybody I came in contact with died. And that's in my book. And I wrote a whole chapter about that week. And I left that story out. And I forgot. That's how many people died that week in my presence that I forgot to add one of the stories. So that same week, the drunk guy white guy stumbles into the hood. Oh, and one of the highest ranking gang members in all of Raleigh, who just got out of prison, calls and is like, there's a suspicious white guy on the stairs, passed out on the stairs of our apartment. And we're like, whoa, because this apartment, it's like, there's only like 12 apartments in this apartment. It's very small. And it's nothing but gang members and prostitutes and like really bad shit, and no white people unless they're like super white crackheads and old, but like no regular white people or regular black people are over at this house. Like it's nothing but crime. So I'm like, oh, I've got to see this. Like, this is awesome. Like the scariest gang member in Raleigh is calling on a suspicious white kid. That's like, the description was wearing khakis and boat shoes. So I get there and it's this drunk guy and he's like, I wake him up. I'm like, hey man, are you good? And he's like, am I being detained? Am I being detained, officer? And I was like, no, but you're passed out drunk and there's a no trespassing sign like right above your head. And I was like, do you have an ID? And he's like, no, I'm not. And you're not getting my wallet. You're not getting my wallet. And I was like, all right, man. We're like, where'd you come from? And he was like, I was at the bar on Glenwood. And that's like 3 miles away, like 2 miles at least. And I'm like, well, dude, you have got, he's like, I'm like, well, hey man, I'm going to give you a ride back. And he was like, huh? And I was like, I'm going to give you a ride back going because you can't stay here. You're going to die. Like they're going to rob you or kill you, probably rape you too. But you can't stay here. And the guy's like, so I was like, here, give me your ID card so I can put it in. He's like, why do you need my ID card? And I was like, well, because I'm taxiing you. It's like a taxi service. I just have to put it on the, he's like, well, I'm not paying for it. And I was like, yeah, you don't have to pay for this. Like, I mean, I'm lying. I just want to see who he is. So I get him in the back of my car and I look him up. He's 21 and he's already got a DUI and he already had a previous underage drinking charge that he hadn't been to court for either one of those. So those were all pending charges. So we're driving back and he starts like crying. He's like, I don't want to go back. I want to go home. And I'm like, well, where do you live? And he's like, Apex. And I'm like, all right. Or he's like, I live in North Raleigh. And I was like, okay, well, we're not going to go to North Raleigh, but I'm going to take you to Glenwood. And I was like, do you have a girlfriend? He was like, fucker, she left me. And I was like, okay, do you have any friends? He's like, they're fucking assholes. They're fucking on her side. Everybody's against me. And I was like, well, hey man, like I give him this little speech about how alcohol is probably a big problem in his life and he needs to get a hold of it and yada, yada. So I take him to these gas pumps in downtown, which are city gas pumps. So that's where they, fill up all the trash trucks, all the city trucks, so cop cars, yada, yada. And it's well lit. And I said, hey man, you can sit here. It's well lit. You have your cell phone. I'm going to write the address. I'm going to type the address into your phone where we're at. And then when you get sober enough that you want to call somebody to come get you. But here you'll be safe. If you leave this parking lot, you're going to get a drunken in public, like guaranteed. So I would lay on this bench. Nobody's going to fuck with you. This is all cops and city employees. You're good to go. And he's like, all right, cool, thanks. And this detective rolls up and he's like, what's that guy's story? And I don't know this detective. He's undercover. And but I remember his car was very noticeable. It was like this reddish color. I don't know. It was like a Eclipse or something. It was a memorable car at the time. And I said, yeah, this guy was asleep. And I told him the address that he was asleep at. And he was like, oh shit, has he got his wallet on him? I was like, that's what I asked when I saw him. And he's like, man, he's lucky. So I leave and we go on. And that weekend I get a phone call on Monday morning and they're like, hey, Eric, we're going to send you an email to detectives. We're going to send you an email. And there's a picture of somebody. Tell us if you recognize him. So I open up the email and it's this kid. He was wearing like the salmon colored polo that he was wearing the night that I saw him. He had the boat shoes and the khaki shorts and everything. A real frat nerd looking kind of guy. And I was like, yeah, I ran into that guy Friday night, Saturday morning. He was asleep. And they're like, oh, well, what did you do? Where did you take him? And I said, well, I took him to the gas pumps. And they're like, what? The gas pumps? And they're like, why'd you take him to the gas pumps? And I was like, well, he was too drunk to take him to the hospital because they would have not taken him. He wasn't drunk enough to take him to the hospital because they'd be like, he's just drunk. He doesn't need to be at the hospital. But he was too drunk to take to the jail because they'd be like, he's too drunk they don't have a holding tank anymore, because there's too much liability. So I was like, there's really nowhere to take him. So I thought that would be the safest place for him. I'm like, oh, all right. And you just dropped him off. And I was like, yeah, I put the address in his phone of where he was at. His phone was like 75% charged. Everything was good. They're like, did you write a report? And I was like, no. And they're like, oh, all right. Well, he never made it home that night. And I was like, well, he did say something about how he wanted to move to Apex or he wanted to walk home and that he didn't like his friends and family. So maybe he just said, fuck it, starting a new life. And they're like, yeah, maybe. So Wednesday comes around and I get another call from the detectives and they're like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm off. Today's my day off. And they're like, well, we need you to come up to the station. And I was like, oh, was everything all right? And they're like, yeah, just come on up to the station. I'm like, oh shit. So I get to the station and they're like, hey, we need you to be honest. Where did you take this kid? And I was like, man, I told you where I took him. And I'm like, why? What's up? And they're like, that's not where you took him. And I was like, no, that's where. I was like, do I need a fucking attorney or something? And they're like, you need to write a report. And I was like, I need to write a report. And they're like, yeah, you need to write a report of everything. So I wrote the whole report. And then they come back and they're like, hey, if you dropped him off, it's going to be on the video. I was like, okay. And he's like, this is your chance to tell us. Like, we're going to go pull the tapes right now. This is your chance. Did you or did you not take him to the gas pumps? I'm like, yo, I swear to fucking God, I've dropped this motherfucker off. Go pull the fucking tapes. I feel like I need a lawyer at this point because I feel like this is getting out of hand. Like, you know, go check the tapes. And I was like, hey, there was also this detective and he had this like purpley maroonish color Eclipse, undercover Raleigh detective. And he saw me drop him off. So they did all this research and they come back and they're like, you know, now I'm there for like hours. And they're like, all right, cool. We saw that you pulled the tapes, blah, blah, blah. We're going to let you know you're clear, but we found him dead. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, we found him dead on the highway on the exit ramp. And I was like, no shit. They're like, yeah. And they're like, did you see him leave or anything like that? And so I don't know if they ever even solved that crime or what happened to it. I never checked it, but that was like the first death that week. And then after that, it was like 3 more people. That guy, the guy that there was another guy that was like, oh, my stomach hurts. And I was like, you'll be all right. And then he died like 30 seconds later. And then another Mexican died on Dacian Road as I was trying to give him CPR because he got shot in the stomach. So, yeah, it was just a really tumultuous week for me. It's so much so that I wrote a whole chapter. But yeah, that was you guys started calling me the Grim Reaper at that point.
So I actually put about my first day as well.
In this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's get into the book.
Yeah. So kind of similar situation where it was just like, here's the keys, time to go. And I was riding with Brian Neighbors, who is a legend in the Raleigh Police Department, huge gang guy, was in homicide for a long time. And it was on night shift. And we were riding around like the MLK Garner Road area. And a call goes out for a double homicide at Bragg East, which is like right around the corner. And Bragg East in Southeast Raleigh is, again, it's a historically Black community, hardly any white people, a lot of open air drug dealing and prostitution.
And any cop that ever worked there got relieved of duty and fired from the Raleigh Police Department or forced to resign. So it was like that like, you want to talk about politics and stuff. That is an example of they never wanted that neighborhood to change until now, where they're gentrifying it by putting giant. So that was the plan from the beginning. They didn't clean that up because they wanted it to decay so they could buy it up for rich white people. But back in the day, all the good cops that worked there had to resign. And now the guy's head of the union.
Well, that
Armstrong.
Was a whole nother thing with like 5Gs.
Yeah, but and then the other guy that wrote the movie, the Bragg East movie,
right,
was forced to resign too. Like anybody that worked down there that tried to give a shit ended up like getting ultimately butt fucked by the department.
So we're right around the corner from this call. We're the first one on scene. And again, like this is my first weekend working, and I get there and I turn to my training officer. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And there's probably 100 people outside at this point, all running around. And the description was Black male wearing dark clothing. And at the time, like the trend was to wear these like plain black t-shirts that they'd buy at AJ's, the convenience store nearby. And so I get there and it's a ton of Black guys who are all wearing black shirts. And my training officer just tells me, stop someone. I see this kid sprinting down Bragg Street. And I'm right out of the academy. So I start chasing after him, catch up to him, tackle him. And I'm like, Raleigh police, what are you doing? Why are you running? He's like, because there's 2 black guys that are dead back there. And he doesn't use the word black. You can use your imagination. But I was like, oh, you know what? This guy's got a good point.
Yeah.
And so
that's a legit reason to run.
I like help him up and get his name and let him go. And I get there and, again, you've got 2 dead guys. I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. So they quickly lock down the crime scene and they're like, all right, Santana, your job is to stand beside this dead body and make sure no one messes with it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can do that. So I'm standing there, and the most awkward thing was the dude's phone kept on ringing, and it was those like really cheap rap tones, that they had on the flip phone. I remember thinking like,
been spending most of my life living in
yeah, but like in that situation, do you answer it?
Hey,
Like,
you can't talk right now.
Is that rude if you just let the guy's phone ring? Or
No, I think it's rude. I think you answer it.
I remember I asked one of the senior officers, it was Gory, Sarah Gore. I don't know if you remember her, but she was like pretty like straight faced too. And she was like, are you a fucking idiot? You know, like, no, you don't answer it. She's like, just stand right there and, you know, wait to be relieved. It's like, okay, I'll just keep my mouth shut. But yeah, that story was in the book. And the reason why we put that in the book is because, you know, this was a 19-year-old college student that was murdered. And this is this is Asheville, North Carolina, and it's on the campus. And so I was telling my brother, that's got to be a really tough job for officers that don't have a lot of experience. This is in 1973. So they don't have training, and standards had just started. So they really didn't even have any formal training on how to lock down a crime scene or how to do a canvas search for witnesses, those type of things. But so I really think that it's easy for us to look back and be like, well, why didn't they do this? Or why didn't they do that? Or they really fucked up that part. But, you know, when you're a rookie and you don't know what you're doing to begin with.
Well, I mean, that's always the problem I have with true crime podcasts and series. And we actually did a true crime series for 2 years on the Federal Stop podcast channel with cops. We had, you guys remember Andrea Uplate and John Bates. And then before John Bates, myself, where we did true crime. And then you had John Bates and Kendra that did true crime. And that's why we did true crime back then, was because every true crime podcast puts all the blame into conspiracy theories on the cops. But what they don't understand is that in true crime, like in a murder scenario in Raleigh, we've got it down to a science. And here's a great example, because catching up with Santana gave me a great example of a new department that he's working at, a much smaller department. But in Raleigh, even as a rookie, I don't know how many murders or how many dead people or how many shootings I went to as a rookie, but it was a lot. I mean, there was a lot. So by the time I graduated field training, if there was a shooting, Brian, or anything, like I knew that when I showed up, if there was already people in place, like I knew, okay, there's nobody putting crime scene tape up, so that's me. And I know that I put crime scene tape up around, I go about 25 meters out and I do a circle there. And then I give that about 10 minutes. And then I go another 25 meters out, and then I started one, and then I go even further out, and I keep going, and we make this big circle. I know to do that. I know that if one person's already doing the crime scene tape, then I'll just go ahead and get more crime scene tape because I know it's going to be longer. I know that if I show up on the crime scene and one guy's standing next to the body, one guy's already doing crime scene tape, but there's shell casings the other way, I'll go back to my trunk and I'll get the markers for the shell casings because I know that's coming up next. I know that the crime scene reporter is going to be needed to record who's here and what time is it and who else is showing up and what time do they get you. So I knew from almost week 2 everything that I needed to do. Everything that I needed to do with the crime scene. I'm reading one of the chats. Says 25 meters. I'm in love, not a half football field or some American measurement. Now I was, I'm Army guy, so I work in meters, brother. But a lot of these agencies in these smaller areas where true crime books come out of, you know why there's no true crime unsolved cases in Raleigh or in Wilmington? Because there's big fucking police departments with lots of federal funding and training. Right. Everybody knows what to do. So, the crimes get solved very quick. But when you get into these smaller agencies, like your new agency where they had a shooting and they don't know what to do with the shooting and they just kind of leave and they don't go look for a body, had there been a dead body, they wouldn't have found that dead body. So the story goes that he's like, dude, I'm working at this new police department. It's super small agency. It's only about 5 guys. They had a shooting overnight. And then he's like, I just started asking questions like, so there was a shooting last night? And they're like, yeah, but there's like, we drove out there and nobody said that anybody was hit. So we just.
Yeah. I mean, they really didn't spend nearly the amount of time on it. And you could tell that, again, like what Eric was saying is with Raleigh, there's a lot of policies that dictate, okay, it's a step-by-step item checklist of what's supposed to be done at a crime scene. And that's what's a lot of agencies are lacking, that and just experience, because when you've done these for a while, it just becomes robotic. When you get on a crime scene, you're not even asking. And what Eric was saying about like reading off each other, you really learn to do as a squad. Like, okay, I see he's setting up crime scene. I've got one that's, riding with the victim to the hospital. I'm going to go start canvassing for witnesses, and, you're making your phone calls to get detectives out there and whatnot. So it's a very fluid process. And, it's really hard when you don't have the leadership on the ground. And I really think that those are the aspects of this case that really affected it 50 years later. Mm-hmm. And Brian can get into this too, with like the autopsy and the timeline. But they really were not on scene very long. From the time that the body was discovered in this case to the time that the body was on the slab at the ME's office was 4 hours.
Yeah, I mean, and even from the time our parents were notified till the time they started the autopsy, it was about 90 minutes. It was really fast.
Yeah. We're going to jump into this case because I know people are going to want to know, how was she murdered? What is this case about? Before we do that, today's show brought to you by ghostbed.com. Sleep so good, it's scary. Right now, 40% off across the board, and some things are up to 50% off on Ghostbed. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Get your loved one the gift that keeps on giving and giving and giving. And no, I'm not talking about STDs. I'm talking about the gift of a good night's sleep. Something that you can get over and over again. Ghostbed has the pillows with the cooling technology. These are pillows built to last the rest of your life. These things weigh like fucking 10 pounds. That's an exaggeration, but they're heavy. But I will carry that weight. You guys know I sleep in hotels and Airbnbs more than I sleep at my own home. I don't get to sleep on my Ghostbed every night, but I can sleep with my Ghostbed pillow. These pillows are absolutely incredible. They are life-changing. The mattresses are life-changing as well. If you're in the market, you get the adjustable base. If you're going to get the mattress, go all in and get that adjustable base, especially when we're talking about Valentine's Day. You want to talk about sex positions and Kama Sutras and all these things. This bed has a million different varieties and shapes. And dude, listen, all you have to do is be creative. I have 5 kids now, thanks to Ghostbed. Tons of different, you got I like that one too, because your partner can go one way and you can go the other way. But anyway, Ghostbed, these are all beds made in the good old USA. Maybe you're even an athlete. These things have like copper inlays for like healing of your bone, I don't know. What does the copper stuff do anyway? I don't know. Look it up. I'm not a fucking doctor or scientist, but they have these inlaid through the Venus Williams or whatever the tennis player's model is that she's all on board with. We got to go down to the factory in Florida. They gave us a big tour of Ghostbed. They've been supporting us since day one, since I started my podcast life. They pay everybody's salaries around here. So listen, support us by supporting those who keep the show going. Head over to Ghostbed right now. I guarantee you your loved one is not expecting something from Ghostbed for Valentine's Day. And you're going to get to use that over and over and over and over and over and over again for years to come. Also, meal planning to the next level. You guys see how lean and mean I'm getting down? I'm at 203, boys and girls. And that's because that's meal planning to the next level by factormeals.com. These are fresh, never frozen meals delivered right to your front door. We've got calorie conscious. We got protein heavy. You want to do lunch and dinner? Good. You want to do dinner and breakfast? Good. Stop eating like a peasant. Switch to a good hearty meal. Listen, you first responders, you're showing up, you're getting to your police station, your firehouse or whatever. You pull out some bullshit tuna fish sandwich that pisses everybody off. You got your peasant white bread that's super terrible for you. And like I said, you're eating like a peasant on your peasant first responder salary. You can take that same money, that same amount of money, because by the time you drive to the grocery store, by the time you buy all the shit that you didn't want, by the time you drive back from the grocery store, you put it all away, by all the time you did all of that, it's the same price as you could have just ordered on Factor Meals. They deliver it to your house every single week. 2 minutes in the microwave, even those stupid microwaves at your first responder job that take like 30 minutes for everything. It's still only 2 minutes to heat these bad boys up. Head over to factormeals.com/wolfpack50 and get you a Factor meal. All right. Also, you can head to Manscaped, use promo code Wolfpack for 20% off and start manscaping, grooming. Like I said, Valentine's Day is right around that corner. Time to trim back the old bushy bush. Beards are cool, but if they can't see your wiener through your downstairs bush, that makes Valentine's Day a little awkward. Head over to manscaped.com right now. Use the promo code Wolfpack. I love my Manscaped thing. I got the I don't even know what they're up to now, like 2.5, 3.5. I don't know. Every year I get the new one. But this one's water resistant, so you can use it in the shower, and it's got a light. You can just fucking trim your balls in the shower with the light. It's like fucking I love those things. So it's like Wolf of Wall Street. Like everybody's shaved all the way down. All the way down. All right, guys, let's jump into this book now. I want to get into this case. Brian, tell me the crime scene. What happened? What do we think happened?
So based on the affidavits that we have from the search warrant and other people that we've kind of talked to, we know that Virginia Olson on April 15th, 1973, she kind of leaves her dorm at UNCA. She is going to the botanical gardens, which are immediately adjacent to UNCA and a part of the UNCA campus. And she's going to do some studying. It is midday. It's about 12:30 when she finally departs from her friends. And there's about 100 kids in the botanical gardens that day, or 100 people in the botanical gardens that day. And we have witnesses that spot her walking towards the botanical gardens. We have, and Cameron can talk more about these two individuals, but we have two individuals that are on the search warrant affidavit who spot her around 1 o'clock. And by 1:15, we have a witness who spots her kind of sitting with a man at a rock on a kind of raised embankment in the botanical gardens. And when he passes back through at 1:45, she's not there. And the man isn't either. And he can just see something flapping in the wind. And we know later it was her books that she had taken with her into the botanical gardens. And two kids, one who was 14 and one who was 17, come across her body at 3:30. And she had been, her shirt had been cut and she had been bound and gagged with that. And there was a significant amount of blood at the crime scene. She had obviously been stabbed in the chest, but her throat had also been cut near her trachea. And so they call the police and kind of chaos begins. And 51 years later, we're still here.
Yeah. So, and was she sexually assaulted, you said?
Yeah. So she was, her kind of dungarees, the way it was described that she was wearing, which is kind of like overalls, I guess, were pulled down when they originally came across her, and she wasn't wearing any panties or anything. And so they assumed she'd been sexually assaulted, but that wasn't confirmed until they did the autopsy later that evening.
And so, so then we have this brutal murder, and the police show up, and you said like what is the questions about the police involvement? Like, what are some of the mistakes that the cops made?
The first obvious mistake, and we're basing this on pictures that we saw of the crime scene, is that they really did not have an established crime scene. You can see in the pictures people milling around. Even her roommate was concerned after she heard about the commotion and brings a picture of Virginia down to a police officer and shows them. And then that's how they were able to confirm that it was Virginia Olson.
And we should also point out that the area where this occurred also was an area that police at the time considered, it was slightly secluded. So it wasn't an obscure spot, but it was just slightly off the beaten trail. And it was considered a spot where winos and a kind of lover's lane where people like to go. So there was some privacy and seclusion there. And so that's another kind of complication with the actual crime scene. In addition, just the challenges of it being just kind of outdoors in one of the spots, is that there's all kinds of stuff that, you can imagine left at the crime scene, this area where kind of winos and kids are from high school are kind of going to hook up and stuff. And so the original investigators are like, they're collecting all kinds of things, but they're not really sure exactly what is related or what isn't to the crime.
Yeah. So, and that's what's cool about this book is that it's coming from the standpoint of a cop and a professor. Somebody, you guys are familiar with the campus, familiar with obviously the state that we're in here. And you went to UNC Asheville, and you're a professor there?
No, that was I'm a professor in West Virginia, but I was a student at UNC Asheville, and that was where I first heard about it. At the time I heard about the case, it had become something of a ghost story on campus. Yeah.
Yeah. So this book really goes into, it's a really fun and easy read. I really enjoyed the book so far. But it's really cool to see, like, you know, especially in a time of true crime, right? Where everybody's always been into true crime. I hate that people are saying like, well, true crime's so trendy. No, it's not. No, it's not. Like, we fucking had Murder, She Wrote. We had Unsolved Mysteries forever. It's like, it's not, true crime is not a new thing. It's not a new fad. Like, it stands the test of time. Everybody loves true crime. Everybody has always loved true crime. True crime there is something, it's like treasure hunting, right? Like, the human spirit, the human mind wants to solve strange cases. It's almost like it's, you know, like we're born into that. Like, that's, you know, there's just some kind of like weird thing that you're born with where you come across cases. So this isn't anything new. But what I think is really cool is that you guys, you know, you followed your intuition, right? You followed your curiosity, and that's exciting to me. You know, that's why I hate public school systems so much. I know you're a professor and everything, and you like academia, but like, I do feel like oftentimes academia stifles creativity and stifles people from having wondrous thoughts or daydreams. And so I always get excited when somebody like yourselves has this idea and you chase this idea and you're like, okay, it's eating at me. It's eating my brain. When did you know, Brian, that you had to research this? Like, what was that moment for you where you're like, I'm going to dedicate my life and my time to solving this case?
Yeah, I don't think it was maybe one moment. It was more just like over an extended period of time. This was one of the things that really interested me about this early on when I first heard about it. It was a very famous case in the 1970s when it first occurred. It's the only murder to date that's ever taken place on UNC Asheville's campus. And it was the murder that actually caused them to actually get a campus police force. They did not have one before. In fact, they used to brag about the fact that they were the only college in the UNC system that did not have a police force. And after this murder, they quickly
Asheville too. That is so fucking Asheville.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, they used to kind of talk about how safe the campus was, and as soon as this happened, there's a quick about face, and they go back to the North Carolina legislature, and they have a campus police force the next fall. But one of the things that was interesting to me about this was it was a case that like everyone kind of knew of, and there's a lot of kind of gossip and all sorts of different kind of bizarre kind of theories that have floated around for about 50 years in Asheville about the case. But it was always interesting to me just because it seemed like even just the basic facts of what the investigation actually looked like had never really been talked about. And I felt like everyone had a different idea of just what happened with it. So we were just understanding what that was at least part of the impetus originally. And I think when Cameron agreed to kind of help me with the book, because you know he's very familiar with law enforcement and was helping me kind of weed through a lot of this stuff, then I got really interested in kind of taking this on. And so, but yeah, the case has been one that's been interesting to me for a long time. I said it's almost like a ghost story in Asheville. It's one of their oldest cold cases that they have. And also just because like if as far as cases getting solved, there weren't many crimes exactly like this that were happening in Asheville. And this is one that even the governor of the state gets involved with. And the SBI devotes 2 agents whose sole job for almost a year is just to assist with this case. And so trying to understand, well, what happened? What were the kind of things that actually were kind of complicated for investigators in kind of figuring this thing out? That was one of the big goals.
And that's all detailed in this book, which is really cool because it's fun to read true crime from the perspective, from multiple perspectives, especially having the perspective of a law enforcement officer, because so many times true crime theories and things are just like, they miss these key points and they write as if they're subject matter experts. And I'll read these books and I'll be like, dude, you're like that theory, you're on a tangent on this theory from something that's another theory that doesn't even make sense because that's not even part of policy. So you're stringing everybody along on a conspiracy theory that's not really even a conspiracy theory because it's not even part of a policy, or that is incorrect in what you did. Like sometimes we'll say like they'll get the rigor mortis wrong. Like they'll say like, oh, the body was stiff, so it must have been, 40, days old. And you're like, no, rigor mortis can like happen almost fucking immediately. And then the body goes unrigid for a little while and then it goes rigid again. Like there are a lot of things that true crime, I don't know. It's mostly females, to be honest with you, that write true crime. So these women, and then they run with this one piece of false information, and it makes it hard for me to finish the book because I'm like, damn, like, that one, like even reading the Franklin and murder book, which is great true crime case. There are some things in the Franklin murder where I'm like, well, maybe that's like we're basing a conspiracy theory based on another theory that theory's pretty flawed too. But like you guys have now stretched this theory out and have like like if you have 8 theories, but this theory sounds really, really good, but it's based on if this theory was correct, which bases on that theory is correct. Mm-hmm. And it's like you go back to the original theory, which you're like, that's probably not right. So, it is great. It's nice to know that this book and it's fun to read it, because it has that perspective of law enforcement, and it kind of takes away some of these conspiracy questions or things like that, because you know how policies work and things like that. Cameron, when you were working through this book, Katie, I'm going to address you in just a minute about the ghost beds. Please stay with me because I am passionate about that, and I do want to talk to you about it, but I want to get through this first. When you were writing this book, did you see things where you're like you already brought up that the law enforcement didn't do certain things? Were you able to quickly see some of the theories as like, well, that is a good theory. However, being a law enforcement officer, I know better because.
Right. So when we're looking at this case, one of the first things that drew me was that the articles that were written, they were chasing one suspect for a really long time. And we knew that one article that we were reading referred to a search of an apartment. And I told my brother, I was like, they listed the items that were collected. So I told him, okay, this is an inventory list, part of the search warrant. And I was like, okay, the first step is let's get a copy of the search warrant, because you can only search an apartment with either a search warrant or consent. And if you have a murder, you're never going to use consent,
right?
Because they can revoke consent during the search. So I called Buncombe County, the courthouse, and I thought, okay, this is a public record. This is going to be very easy to obtain. And I'm giving the guy the address, the date that they did it, the victim's name, and his name is Keith. Nice guy, but he was like, yeah, we're really busy. Can I call you back tomorrow with it? I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll call you back about the same time. He's like, yeah, no problem. And so I call him again, and he's like, yeah, that's going to be like looking for a needle in a haystack because you don't have the suspect's name. I was like, well, you've got everything else for this warrant. I've even got you the date and the address. And so he tells me, I'm going to need some time to look through this. I said, okay, I'll give you a week. So I call him back a week later. Same thing. Yeah. I think it's going to be at state archives. So start calling state archives. After 4 months of chasing this thing down, I even called a buddy that's a lawyer in Raleigh to try to get him to see if he could help us. I had to start complaining to actually Asheville and write them emails about, hey, you're supposed to be you talk about transparency. I know from interviewing the cold case detective that this warrant does exist. He's confirmed that he has a copy. He won't give it to me because they don't, that's one of the things that they don't want to do is be responsible for providing public records to the public. That should be the clerk's job. But we're pretty confident that this thing has been destroyed or lost. And so, again, after 4 months, we were able to get that search warrant. And I think that and the medical examiner's report, which Brian had some of the same issues he can talk about, we put both of those in the book, unredacted, because we felt, as well as the timeline that we were able to construct, because we really feel that there should be some discussion about this. It should not be this is who definitely did it type of thing. You should be able to read this and form your own opinion. And if you read through this and you think we're wrong, we would love to hear about it. We're open to just a couple weeks ago, Brian was talking to an FBI profiler that brought up a theory that we really overlooked. So,
yeah, and actually, What Cameron was mentioning too, one of the things, this was like a huge thing for us when he was able to get the search warrant, because one of the things for 50 years, there's been this rumor about this, that the police had a prime suspect. And so this was a cold case, but it wasn't one of those situations in which investigators were clueless. There were a lot of people they looked at. And this one individual was someone who not only had multiple generations of investigators been convinced was responsible, but the chief of police, a guy named Will Anarino, he had given these public statements where he said he had zero doubt in his mind who was responsible for this case. And it was that person that the search warrant was executed on. So we became really I was really fixated on just kind of, well, who was this guy? Everybody that's associated with investigation saying they're pretty sure he did it. Because even though the case was really kind of infamous in Asheville, no one knew who this was. And I thought, like, well, how can this be such, this small community, less than 50,000 people at the time? Like, how can it be getting this much attention and no one knows who this individual is? And so when we finally were able to get the name of this, we ended up discovering like the whole story was more bizarre than we imagined.
Well, yeah. Do you want to talk about it, or do you want people to read the book on that part?
What do you think, Cameron? Maybe you could talk a little bit about the guy who was with our prime suspect, maybe.
Yeah, so that's what I think is interesting is
the investigator's prime suspect. Yeah,
a lot of the theories that were floating around were based on a guy that broke out of a mental institution called Highland Hills Hospital in Asheville, which is creepy as fuck.
Yeah,
I mean, Brian can get into the history about that, but there's like some crazy shit going on. And I actually talked with a guy that worked there. And so he said, he was like, yeah, what everyone's talking about is that the guy broke out because he's from this prominent family. And so the guards give him like special treatment, and that he murdered Virginia, came back, dumped his bloody clothes in the dumpster, and the doctors know about it, but they're not allowed to say anything. And his family has been keeping this under wraps for decades. And I was like, wow, that sounds like a crazy story.
Right.
So, I was like, that's too good to be true, though.
Right.
But then we start digging into it, and this guy really is from a prominent family, and he really is has a history of being in mental health hospitals.
Were you able to talk to the family?
No, we actually didn't. We tried to stay away. There's only there are some family alive, but we generally tried to kind of stay away from them for the time being.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting to even add on top of this is when we get the search warrant finally.
Yeah.
And I'm reading it, and I'll just drop his name. So the two, there's a guy named James Gore, who's kind of the witness in the search warrant. And
is related to Al Gore?
Well, it gets better. So it's James Gore, and the guy that they had been investigating for decades, his name is John Rivas Jr. His family is from the Northeast, and his dad was a lawyer, really prominent lawyer. They had some political ties. Rivas, we know, used to be in advertising. He also did some documentary films that you can watch on, whatever streaming service you prefer. And so he's got political ties. But then the guy that he's with, James Gore, was on Ronald Reagan's prayer team. And he's got it's like a quasi church called the Light Center in Black Mountain, North Carolina.
I was just in Black Mountain for a few weeks.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy shit. Like, he's got videos you can find where he thinks you can.
He's dead now too.
Yeah, the light's energy, and I get that some people believe that, and sure, sunlight's great for you. But this
I
is
like
stuff
to spread my ass cheeks and let the sun soak up into my beehole.
Yeah, I mean that's appropriate.
Remember when that was a trend, like in the COVID era? Remember when like all the celebrities were fucking sunning their buttholes? What was that called? Does anybody remember what that was called?
I think it was bleaching.
No, it was not bleaching your asshole. You know who did it though? Like, and they made a really, really great YouTube or funny reel about it was Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin was into that, sunning his rectum. Does anybody remember that? Did anybody remember that phase during 2020 when everybody was sunning their rectums? They were getting what? Yeah, that's what it was. What was it called?
Perineum sunning.
Yes, perineum sunning. That's what it was.
I can't believe that's actually a thing.
Yeah, you guys don't remember that? Like during COVID,
vaguely
all the
do.
celebrities. Yeah, there it is. Perennial sunning. Murph 530 put it out there. Yeah, here it is. Yep. They were putting their buttholes. Give me some images.
That will get us removed.
Oh, okay. Because people were putting in the images, but they would put like a little sunflower on their beehole. But yeah, they would like grab the back of their legs and they would sun their buttholes for a few minutes at a time, and it was like a big thing. It was like boost your immune system, while they were trying to find a cure for. Yeah, there we go. They're fucking sunning their buttholes. See. Yeah, that was the thing. Like you could join together and put your feet together and sun each other's beeholes together. Fucking Hollywood is weird, dude. KDK in the chats had mentioned something about Ghostbed really quick, and I just wanted to bring it up. She says, is it really worth all the hype? I will tell you, my own personal experience with Ghostbed is I never had a new mattress. I was always raised on hand-me-downs and everything like so. To have a real mattress and to have one like Ghostbed was a life changer for me. It was like the first time I ever had Egyptian cotton sheets. The pillows are tall. That's depending on what pillow you get. My children have the lighter version. I think it's the light. The light. If you can go to their website, Josh, on their pillows. But my they have like long. They have like soft, medium, and hard. And so my wife ordered 2 more pillows when she was pregnant because she likes them between her knees when she's pregnant. But my pillow, there's a couple of different ones. I have like 4 or 5 different Ghostbed pillows, but the Ghostbed itself is absolutely incredible. And it's like one of these mattresses that will last you forever. They do have that cooling technology. So if you do get cold at night, if you get hot at night and you're, from the south rolling over on a Ghostbed, you always feel like you're on the cold side of a pillow. Now the silk pillowcase, if you get this, that is for people who have curly hair. That protects your hair. So that's what the silk pillowcase is for, Nightkin. It is slippery, but that's good for your hair because it doesn't have static. It doesn't pull your hair out. It's for women. So congratulations. Don't be a fucking bitch. Don't be a little girl. No, I'm just kidding. Nightkin, we love you. But yeah, that's what those silk pillowcases are for. And but yeah, anyway, I would say out of all the things in my life, my Ghostbed's my favorite. It's the most special thing in my life. Well, guys, I really enjoyed this book, and I can't wait to finish it. Do we see? I think with this book comes kind of bringing more light to this case. Are you guys looking at putting any pressure on getting this cold case kind of reopened to get the momentum and the movement back into the cold case? And if so, is there going to be another book, like a follow on as this continues?
Well, some of it's kind of up in the air right now. We are hoping that it's getting a lot of talk in Asheville right now as people are because most people, as we said, don't really understand kind of just what happened in the case. But also as recently as last week, we had one of the lead profiler in the Golden State Killer case has offered to reach out to Asheville on our behalf, has been working with us. And so they reached out to offer their assistance in reviewing the case, and so far Asheville has not been interested and will not return their calls. And so there are three very famous profilers that had offered their services for free.
I'm so disappointed in fucking Asheville, dude, with the with all of the hurricane stuff. I went down there to work. I've never been more aggravated by one group or city of folks than I am with the Asheville folks. I have always been a mountain guy. We've owned property up in the mountains. We love the North Carolina mountains. I've always been very fond of it, and I've never I never really even thought about Asheville so much until I had to go there for the hurricane stuff. And I was in and out of there for around 8 weeks. And just the attitude of Asheville locals is disgusting. They were all about the false information and the death toll, and because they had their electricity back meant that everybody else needed to go the fuck away. And they didn't do anything to let other volunteers help. I just felt like a lot of people in Asheville were the pretentious, stuck up, people that you see in movies, like the rich people that move into a mountain area and build their nice house and then like kind of fuck everybody else over. Kind of see that in the beginnings of Yellowstone. I can see an Asheville college pulling some shit like this. Like, oh, how dare you try to tarnish our good name of Asheville, you know, and Biltmore and all the creepy stuff, you know, because frankly, like even Biltmore, which isn't very far from Asheville, you know, there's a lot of creepy conspiracy stuff that like I really believe, like John Podesta, some of those paintings in John Podesta's house like really look like they came from, you know, the house there, the Biltmore. So yeah, Asheville's a very strange place when it comes to that. A lot of elitism. It almost reminds me of kind of like San Francisco, the outskirts of San Francisco, where the Hollywood elites go to the mountains and go to some of the ranches out there and do nefarious things. They try to keep things secrets because there are homes in Asheville that are like gated off that like nobody's ever seen. You can't like fly over them or anything. A lot of weird folklore out there.
You know, one of the other things that we do point out in the book was we had developed some new evidence in this case, and that a lot of the people that the police interviewed originally were the Virginia Olson's friend group around Asheville and in the kind of immediate communities around North Carolina. But she was a prolific letter writer, is what her friends always told us. And she wrote letters on a near weekly basis to her friends. And her last letters were actually postmarked the day before she was murdered. And her friends came back home after her funeral and they had these letters from her in the mail. And so we talk about some of those in the book. But the friends that we are in touch with who have kept all of those letters to this day that are a nearly weekly chronicle of her life, and we think kind of go to victimology here, have never been reviewed by the police ever. The police didn't know they existed, and they've never been approached by the police, including Cameron texted one of the cold case detectives associated with it and told him that, you know, there's this stuff that's there, and we'd be happy to put them in touch with those individuals if they wanted to kind of reach out to them, and they just never responded to us. So
wow, dude, that's nuts.
And to put that in perspective, this was Brian received an email from, he was kind of like a boyfriend at the time, but you know, he's in his like 70s now, and he felt it was so important that he said, you know, I woke up in the middle of the night one night and I couldn't get this off my mind that Virginia had sent me some photos of her, and they were like photos of her in like swimsuits and kind of like underwear, but it was like advertisement stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we felt that was important. Like, who took these photos? Oh, it just so happens that John Rivas was in advertising. Maybe that was the connection. So shit. I emailed one of the cold case detectives and told him about this, and it was like crickets.
That's wild. I love how in the book you guys have all the affidavits in here. You have all of the letters. There's complete transparency. You know, this is really fun because it's like you can almost play true crime with it too. You know, this is something like you can get involved in this case and have theories like the one that you just said. I mean, that's a great theory to have. Again, why a police perspective. If you're really into true crime, and everybody is, you know, and don't be one of these people that's like, you know, and I hate that when I tell people I do true crime, they're like, oh my God. Oh. You know, it's like you're only saying that because you like to say things are overrated, right? Like it's like when everybody buys Apple, there's always that one guy that doesn't know anything about it, but refuses to buy because everybody else is in on it. Like true crime, like I said from the beginning, we're all born with this like crazy thing inside of us that wants to explore, that wants to know more, that wants to solve these cases of curiosity. And this is one of those books where it's like, you really get to kind of, you know, and I don't, it's not a game, but you know, and this is somebody's life and it's maybe, but it is in a way, it's like you're reading this book and you're like, you're getting to kind of play true crime as you go along of it. And a case still hasn't been solved. And so somebody out there could read this and have a perspective that nobody else has seen. So what a fun book. Where can they get this book at? I know it's on Amazon. Tell us a little bit more. Where can we find this book? We have listeners in New Jersey and Sweden and all over the place.
It's also through Barnes & Noble as well. And in early February, the Audible and the audiobook editions will be dropping as well. So coming up very soon.
Your local bookstore can also get it because it's in Ingram. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll get, and you know, you can request it through your library. they should be able to get a hold of it. But I'm excited. I'm proud to own this book. I'm going to get him to sign it for me while he's here. And then if you're interested in any of the stories that we told at the beginning of the show, you can go ahead and pre-order my book, which is Pig Latin, a seriously funny true story, which has all Cameron and I's stories inside of it, which is very funny and hilarious. And look, we're trying to up those sales right now so that we can get a second edition, not a second edition, but a second wave of book orders. Again, the book comes out in the fall. It's one of the #1 releases in its genre from Simon & Schuster, and we really want to see that book do well. So please pre-order that today. Order this one now so you have something to read, and then pre-order that one. So when you finish this one, the next one will be here. KDK says, I invented true crime, FY. Listen, I want to go back to your ghost bed things. Listen, I've been pushing ghost bed for over 4 years now. Since I started podcasting, I have done live shows on ghost beds. Listen, Mike the Cop, I got Conservative Anthony is up on a ghost bed. Tons of other celebrities are all on ghost beds now. And everybody that I've put on a ghost bed, that's the one thing we all have in common. We all talk to each other about it. Ross Patterson, Jesse Weissman. A lot of people are on the ghost bed train. So please, literally, like I've been to their facility. Like it's family ran, like, dude, like this guy, the kid, like some of the kids that are in college, like work in the college and they also work in the customer satisfaction area. The wife and husband both work in research and development. They're inventing new things. They've, like athletes are using ghost beds. I mean, they're real deal beds. This isn't like, they're not big market store brands, although they do have a contract with, I believe, Costco. Don't quote me on that. It's one of those big box chains that they actually make their brand, but they make them there in their facility. But Ghost Bed in itself is like not one of these like big giant, you go to every store, big box store. Like these are made in-house, American made in the good old USA. And you can try them out for 101 nights, not 98, not 99, but 101 nights. So I have a personal relationship with them now. They sponsored me for about 2 years, and then we actually got to go and meet them in person. And it was incredible opportunity to meet them. And I've always been in love. So I'm always very passionate about Ghost Bed. And like I said, even if they decided they didn't want to sponsor us anymore, I will still always push Ghost Bed. I still wear their t-shirts all the time, and I don't get paid. I just made I made a short yesterday and didn't even get paid for it. I just did it because I fucking woke up and my wife and I were talking about how good a night's sleeps we had. And I was like, we've been sleeping on Ghost Bed for a while, but I was like, I'm gonna fucking make it real. So anyway, yeah, we love it. Guys, thank you so much for coming in today on your day off. Brian, thank you guys for coming in and being a part. This has been a very fun, special moment. I'm so proud of you guys. One, I'm proud of you, Brian, for taking your curiosity and running with it. So many times people get curious about things and they just sit on it. And this just, it excites me when people really go with it. And Jace, I'm really proud of you two for believing in your brother and believing in the project enough to give your insight and to help write this book and this story, and for reaching out to me and allowing me to have you guys on a podcast. It means a lot. So really good book, man. I'm like I said, when I read it, I feel like I'm at a board game. Do you remember the episode of The Office? Do you guys watch The Office?
Oh, I didn't know if you were talking to them.
Do you guys watch The Office?
Not really.
There's an episode of The Office where they want to solve a MIDA, and it's a game because they're going to lose the company, and it's like a Southern fried homicide type thing. And Juju Mama, you guys got to go back and watch the episode. They're trying to solve a real MIDA down south, and so they got all these clues, and they have to figure out who did the murder. And it's a really funny episode. But when I'm reading this book, I feel like I'm playing their game, where it's like you're really trying to figure out who fucking solved this murder. Like you're reading about these suspects, you're reading about the players in the case, and you're, in your brain, all you can think about is, what piece of information is going to help me solve this case, as if you were going to be able to solve it yourself while you're reading the book. And I think that's really cool. And it's a different take on true crime, which has come Nancy Pantsy. It's kind of come like, a bunch of girl gossip writing it and all the salacious moments, where you guys did a very objective writing of this book. So really good stuff. That's from the episode right there. I'm not going down for this. Really funny. So Guys, we appreciate you being here. Everybody in the Wolf Pack, listen, if you want to catch up on our news, we got a lot of breaking news on FAWKES News. That is the new podcast and channel for just news. So please go to FAWKES, get all of the most important news all week, all the updates. Right now, we are following very, very closely the releasing of the JFK files. This is bombshell. We've been waiting on this for 5 or 6 years now. They're supposed to bring it out December 17th of like 2020. I think it was like 2021. And then the new administration, the Biden administration, took over, and the Biden administration said, nope, I know that the Trump administration said they're going to release this. We're not going to release it. And so they kept it hush hush all the way up until now. Allegedly, they have 14 days to release is that correct, Josh? I don't want to misspeak.
So what the executive order reads is they have 15 days to create a plan and 45 days to release it in its entirety.
Okay. Yep. So they have it here. Now, Katie K says, can he come back on for a book club Q&A? Yeah, let's do that. We'll do that. We'll do a special night series on this case. Because true crime is fun, and we can bring John back in that. Give us a moment to read it. Let's pick a day, maybe in March. Gives everybody time to buy this book and read it. And I'll either bring both of you if you have time, or one or the other, depending on how we can work out you guys' schedule. And let's do that. Let's do a special we'll do like kind of a YouTube, we'll push it out to you guys. We won't make a huge deal of it, but what we'll do is we'll maybe do an hour. It'll just be Q&A. Maybe we can, we'll figure out a fancy way of doing it. And so yes, go and buy this book. Maybe I'd like to put on the maybe mid-March, late February. Let's do a Q&A. Bring you guys back on here for your Q&A. Also, I want to do this as well while I'm here. I'm going to get a signed autograph copy from at least one of the authors. I don't have both here of this book. I would like to mail another one or two out. So let's do this. If you go and you subscribe to FAWKES News, screenshot that you are subscribed to Fox News, and screenshot that you have, let's just do that. Let's just say subscribe to Fox News, hit the alert. That's FAWKES News. Screenshot that you did that. And I will personally send you, I'll send the first, I'll do a drawing. You have, because this is mostly audio, you have until Wednesday as listening to this. Wednesday, what's the date on Wednesday? Wednesday is going to be the 29th. Wednesday is the 29th. So on Wednesday, the 29th, by then, if you have screenshotted me through Instagram, Failure to Stop, or Facebook, Facebook message me a screenshot of you subscribing to FAWKES News on YouTube and screenshotting a 5-star rating or review on Spotify for Failure to Stop and Fox. That's it. That's the whole thing. So you got to leave a 5-star rating or review on FAWKES podcast and Failure to Stop podcast. And you have to screenshot that you subscribe to their YouTube channel. And then I will do a drawing on Wednesday out of all of those. And I will send 2 people out of that drawing signed copies of this book. Is that a fair deal?
Yeah,
I think that'll be fun.
great.
And then everybody else, if you buy this book and screenshot it, I also want to see your screenshot that you bought this book, and then I want to post it on Fair to Stop of everybody holding the book when they get it. So as you guys order this book and get it, send me a personal screenshot on the Instagrams, and then we'll at least post it for you guys. But that'll be a lot of fun. So Wednesday the 29th is the deadline on that. Guys, I really, really appreciate you guys all tuning in. Katie K says, nothing fancy. I prefer gritty true crime coverage. Yeah, this is pretty gritty. This is more exploratory. I really like the way that this is written, because it's not so much in story form as it is in like kind of covering the case and how you guys went about covering the case. And I love all the pictures. There's tons of pictures, affidavits, pictures of newspaper clippings, suspects, all sorts of things. So really a great true crime book to put in here. Appreciate you guys. For everybody in the Wolf Pack, guns up, giddy up. We'll see you on Fox News for the next news update. Until then, guys, see you next time.